Hello YouTube, Herman here from Sphere 10 Software. In this video we're going to talk about visual inheritance as provided by the Visual Studio Designer for WinForms. Visual inheritance allows you to create a form which inherits its presentation from a base form, in much the same way that when you create a class you can inherit behavior and state from a base class. So what Microsoft have tried to do is allow you to extend the concept of code inheritance into the presentation layer via visual inheritance. So what we'll do to show this is that we'll create a new base form, and on this base form we will drop some common controls . And we might throw in a text box in there as well, and we'll also throw in there a menu strip. Great. Now what we have to do, well, let me just set up the menu strip. Let me add a menu A, and we'll add 1, 2, and 3. Great. Save that. Now what we'll do is we'll create a subform which inherits from the base form. First we need to build a solution so that the designer is aware of our base form. Then we add a new Windows Forms and inherited form here. We'll just type in subform. We'll choose base form of for the base class. Now when we look at the base form we can see that we have inherited some of the presentation elements, like the button, the text box, the label, and the menu. We can see that it's been inherited by the fact that it has a icon on the top left. Now it's actually locked down. We can't edit it, and in the same way that in code inheritance you have to set the modifiers of your methods or properties to protected so that they can be accessed from the subclass, we have to do the same for visual inheritance. So what we do is we go to the properties of each of our objects and set their modifier to protected, and we'll do the same for our controls. We could also set it to public, internal, and others, but we don't really need it. All we need it is to be protected so that it can be visible in the sub form. Okay, so let us rebuild this solution. Go into our sub form, and as we can see, we can now move our inherited controls, and this makes it very useful for us if we wanted to have a scenario where we could design template forms from which subforms will be based off, and we can put as much functionality as we could in the base forms and allow that functionality to be inherited to your subforms. This would mean that you would have a lot of code reuse in your presentation tier, which would make your productivity better, and it would reduce the number of bugs, and it would also make your maintenance easier as well. So it's quite a lot of benefits that we can get from using such a feature. Unfortunately, some of the controls are not able to be inherited correctly, and Microsoft have intentionally limited or locked down certain controls from being visually inherited because they feel that it would create too many problems. And if you read their comments on this, what they've said is that they thought that it was too difficult for them to resolve this the issue of visual inheritance for complex controls, and they basically just locked it down. They promised to have this feature in Visual Studio 2005. They promised it in 2008. They promised it in 2010, but they've never gotten around to providing it. And a lot of people have, as a result, not used visual inheritance because I don't think it's possible to create a production application without the use of these controls. So if we can't visually inherit all the controls, then we might as well not visually inherit any of them. And that's been a unfortunately the problem with visual inheritance up until now. What I've done is I've created some controls that will allow us to achieve visual inheritance for the menu strip, tool strip, and status strip controls, thus having the full suite of controls able to be visually inherited, and that solves a lot of our problems. But that's in the next video. In this video, what I just wanted to show was how visual inheritance works. So we've seen how we can inherit the functionality. Let's try some basic events. So we'll make an event handler for that button, and we'll just show a message box. So base button clicked, and in the subform we'll do the same. Base sorry, this one it's sub button clicked, and what we'll do in the programs is we'll launch the subform as the main form. Okay, so when we run our main form, we can see here our control. So we click the button, we first see that the base event gets fired first, then the sub event gets fired first. And that proves that's a basic overview of how visual inheritance works. Now please see the next videos just to see how we can overcome the limitations of the toolstrip lockdowns that Microsoft have intentionally put into Visual Studio. Until then, have a good one.